Welcome to the Toca Backstage Podcast. Join Toca's Executive Director, Chris Wolf, in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Welcome to another edition of Toca Backstage. On Sunday, September 13th at 10 a.m., we will be live streaming Breakfast in Ireland with two accomplished Irish musicians, Oisin and Samantha. They have actually performed with Toca before, once in Atlantic Steps, and again for Irish Christmas in America. These are two lovely people performing some great songs, traditional Irish songs, and it's just a great way to start the day. So grab your scone, grab your Irish tea, and tune in on Sunday, September 13th at 10 a.m. Tickets are available at torrancearts.org, and it's going to be a great event. So here's my conversation with Oisin. Welcome to another edition of Toca Backstage. It is my pleasure to have Oisin with me today, and I'm purposefully not pronouncing his last name because I messed it up each time I try. People who are fans of Toca or who have been to our shows will recognize you because we've had you in Atlantic Steps and Irish Christmas in America, but that's surprisingly not the only thing you do, because you also have another group. What was it? What's the group you have? Yeah. Which came first?
Well, thank you, Chris, for having me on today. And you and Toca have been wonderful supporters of Irish music, so thank you so much. And actually my first act or band that I got involved with right out of college was Taylor. Taylor was a band that I set up along with a few musical friends of mine just after leaving college. So Taylor is the name, and Taylor is nearly 20 years old.
Nice. And what inspired you to put together Atlantic Steps and the other shows?
The Atlantic Steps was much more of a dance focused thing than I had ever been involved with. Now I'm married to a dancer, so that. I'm not going to say it makes me any more knowledgeable about dance, but it certainly makes me more interested. But Atlantic Steps grew out of a musical and I suppose a friendship with Brian Cunningham, who is the main guy in Atlantic Steps. And Brian was not someone that I knew growing up. The Irish scene is a small one, but Brian, because he was kind of exclusively involved in the dancing, Shandos dancing, rather than the musical side of it, our paths didn't cross until 2007, and we both were teaching at a camp in Ireland for a week, and we just hit it off, had an amazing week, an amazing time together. And Brian just struck me as someone that was very talented and very eager to just get his style of dance out there. So I've had many fun times with Brian since.
Well, I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed working with you guys on that, because he was a pleasure to work with, and you are also. Now, on Sunday, September 13th, we're having Breakfast in Ireland, which is kind of odd because for us it'll be 10 a.m., but for you it will be, what, 6 p.m.?
Exactly, 6 p.m., yeah.
So while everyone is hunkering down here in the States with their scones and Irish breakfast, you'll be hopefully having dinner. But you're going to perform with your wife, Samantha Harvey, who is actually who's from Ventura, California, right?
Right, that's it. Yes, Samantha is a Ventura native and lived there actually up until our paths crossed, and she, for some reason, was kind enough to move over to Ireland, and that's where we're living here on the west coast of Ireland in a place called Sligo. But we actually first met in California, and the story actually is that we met during that Atlantic Steps tour that you presented at Toca in 2013. We actually met on that tour.
Really? 2013, wow, is that long ago? Wow.
It is
I,
amazing.
I actually remember the first time we met at a booking conference, and you just struck me as just this nice human being, and it has been a pleasure working with you ever since. And so walk me through, you said earlier that the music scene in Ireland is small. For somebody who's only been there, I mean, I was in Ireland with my mother like some years ago for like 11 days.
Lovely.
It seemed anything but small, because it's like any pub you went into, there was music going on. How is it growing up in Ireland being a musician? It just seems like there's so much camaraderie.
You nailed it. That's exactly the way it is. And when I say small, the scene is small because Ireland is small, but not because there aren't a lot of musicians. There are heaps of musicians for the size of the country, but just given that everywhere is like within a few hours of each other, you tend to, particularly, I think, and that's one of the beautiful things about being a musician in Ireland, is it takes you out of your local area and gets you, making friendships, often lifelong ones, with people all over the country. That's one of the really beautiful things about music for me, about being a musician in Ireland, is that social part of it, which, let's face it, has always been a big part of. That's actually been the main part. The reason for Irish music, song, and dance has been social.
And do you think, for people in the States, I mean, it is, I mean, it's a big difference between like music in the States. You go, you buy a ticket, you go to a show, or you buy a ticket, you go to a club. But in Ireland, it just seems like it's, oops, sorry about that. That's never
No
happened
problem.
before. That in the States, you buy a ticket, you go to see a show, and whether you're in a bar or in a show, it's like you sit there and you enjoy the music. In Ireland, from what I saw, the majority of it was, I mean, it's you walk into a pub, you walk into anywhere, and it's like there's music and musicians. It's almost participatory, where if you walked in with a instrument, you could start playing with whoever's there. Is that an accurate assumption?
Yeah, pretty much it is. Yeah, that's why these kind of things happen mostly in the extended summer period, because it fits well with people being on vacation and attending festivals. So you mentioned participatory, and yes, it has always been participatory. So we can all remember being a child. I can remember being a child and being exposed to this music, and being made feel very welcome by musicians of all sorts of ages. And then, when you're in your maybe late teenage years, you kind of like to play a lot with people that are around that age group, because of the social element is so strong. And then, once you get a little bit more mature, you kind of open out again to playing with people of all sorts of ages. So, but let's face it, Irish music it's not a static thing, it's a tradition. It's a very strong tradition, thank goodness. But it changes, it not in a revolutionary way, but in a nuanced way. It changes with people's lifestyles, and I have to say, with people's lifestyles everywhere being that bit busier now compared to maybe the 80s, which is when I started to learn music first. The places where music happens and the amount of time, how spontaneous it is. All these things do evolve with time. So it's probably a little bit more organized nowadays than it was 20 years ago. Who knows where it's headed after that? But I think it reflects life. It reflects people's lifestyles, and it's a beautiful mix of some people that are full-time musicians, people that are kind of semi-professionals, people that will just are happy to play in a pub with a few friends, and it's a mix of all those things. And then, of course, we have, which is a beautiful thing in Ireland, we have so many people that learn it from the ages of 4 and 5, and it becomes a wonderful activity for them to take part in. And some of those won't always, keep playing. Some of them will pack it in when they're in their teens, but they've at least kind of had an experience of that culture, which is lovely.
And do you think for people in America that, I mean, I noticed that, like, with the introduction of, what was it, Lord of the Dance, there seemed to be an increase of interest in Irish culture in America. Do you think that was sort of the conduit, or do you think it would have happened anyway?
I've heard plenty of people talking about these things over the years, and of course, I've only experienced life, through my own lens from maybe, the 90s into the 2000s and that time. But people definitely say that Riverdance and Lord of the Dance and that dancing scene gave a huge boost to Irish culture, Irish music and dance at that time. I think going back a little bit further, it's generally kind of said that the folk boom of the 60s and 70s gave it a huge lift as well, particularly not only in Ireland but in America. And I mean, you guys had such great folk festivals, spring up in the 60s and 70s, and a huge awareness and interest of folk music in general. That Irish music was definitely a beneficiary of that in America.
And would you classify what you do as folk music, or?
Ah, good question. We use the word traditional, and then we also use the term folk in Ireland, but folk tends to be more associated with the singer-songwriter type of genre than traditional instrumental playing, instrumental music. So I know that's not the case in every country, but in Ireland, I think we've tended to use traditional music more for the sort of stuff that we do, and folk is a slightly broader term, which doesn't encompass as much of instrumental music, But then, Irish musicians have played at folk festivals and will do as well. But I think it's interesting how, certainly in America, because the whole concept of having an Irish festival, putting that kind of exclusivity, this is an Irish festival, which of course often takes in Scottish musicians and musicians from other maybe Celtic associated countries. But I think just that sort of sense of Irish having their own festivals has maybe kept Irish music a little out of some of the great American folk festivals over the year. It was nearly kind of, created its own space with the Irish festivals. But I know from our, short touring lives with Teda and that some of the folk festivals that we played in America were some of the greatest festival experiences we had, because it was so much more exciting for us to play at festivals where there were musicians from other parts of the world and playing playing very different musics than us. Of course, we love to listen to Irish music all day, but we get that here in Ireland. So going to America, it was always more exciting to be in a folk festival or somewhere like that, or a world music festival, where we could sample other great musicians.
And so you started out with your first group, and then you branched into Atlantic Steps, and then Irish Christmas in America. Mm. What was the trend? What was the deciding point to say, okay, we've done Ireland, now let's move to this, let's take on the States? I mean, that, to me, that seems a little overwhelming, but you seem to do it very well, because I remember I think the first time I met you at the booking conference, that was your first conference you'd been to, right?
Right, yeah. I think maybe it comes from growing up in a small country that as Irish people we're used to looking outwards. Obviously if you're living in America, you've got so much to soak up and discover, even within your own country. But in Ireland, we're always excited about looking further afield and things like that. Plus, when I suppose my first experience of once I was growing up, I started to do a lot of teaching, and teaching at summer festivals in Ireland, where I met a lot of musicians and coming from America to learn Irish music. And so I got to know quite a few, particularly fiddlers that were coming and learning fiddle in Ireland, and some of them were super super nice, and they would say, oh look, if you come to America, give me a shout, I can always try to put on a concert in our local town for you, kind of very kind invitations like that. And we back in 2001 when Tata started, we did some lovely concerts in Ireland, but then I started, right away to look at would it be possible to do something in America. And the very first concert we did was over in lovely Martha's Vineyard, and a really nice lady called Mary Wolverton had attended kind of some of the summer festivals I was talking about in Ireland, and I taught her fiddle a lot of times, and she was one of those kind of people who offered to put on a concert for us. So that was the very first concert Tata did. So it was just basically a short, like 10-day tour, but it was the beginning. What made it possible for me in Ireland was actually just the onset of the internet. I mean, I was just finished college, and I had never used a computer until I went to college. We never had a computer at home at all. And then I went to Trinity College in Dublin and got here's the internet and here's email, and it was a whole exciting new world, and we can actually contact people. I mean, I actually never had a phone in the house when I was growing up. We didn't even have a phone. I think I had the internet before I had a phone. So here was a way of contacting the outside world. So I just started looking up, places to play, and then people that I had met, and put together a short little tour. And that kind of provided the first seeds of God, this is an exciting thing, and it might be possible to do it.
So that's interesting. So you grew up without a phone.
Yeah.
Tell me about the town is it the same town you live in now that you grew up in?
No, it's not. Even though my parents do live in the town that I live in now, but they didn't move there until later. But no, I grew up. I was actually born in Dublin, so I was born in the city. But my parents had kind of wanted to escape the air pollution of the city and stuff like that, and both of them had grown up in Dublin as well, so they were excited by a move out west to the countryside. So we headed for, when I was like about 3 or 4, age 3 or 4, my family headed for Clare, which is on the west coast, but a bit further south than where we are in Sligo here. But it's a great place for music. So there was a music class just like a 5-minute walk from where we lived. So that's where the music started. And we moved further up to Sligo when I was 11. But I spent all my childhood, most of it in rural Ireland, and that's where the music. I mean, I could have learned music in Dublin, but it was just where we were living in rural Ireland. It was very easily accessed, and there was a lot of music around.
And so, Samantha, your wife, is also a musician. Did she, obviously a fabulous dancer, but did she come to the table with the appreciation of the Irish music? Obviously, she enjoyed it because she danced to it, but I mean, or was her musical leanings a little more like pop or rock or?
The Irish dance, I think, was what you asked a question about river dance and northern dance a few minutes ago, and that's what inspired Samantha to get into the Irish scene. There was a great dancing teacher in Ventura, Galway, lady called Maura O'Connell. She still teaches there, but Samantha, started Irish dance lessons first, and that's how she began her interest in Irish music. And the music came after the dancing for her. Her enjoyment of the music, was spurred by her dancing lessons. So that's where it started for her. So we can thank Riverdance and that move in the 90s for Samantha's, because she doesn't have any Irish background at all.
Oh, really? It's not in her.
Not in her at all. No.
I would have assumed, especially having talked to her. I mean, talking to you guys, like when you first came out when we first met her.
Yes.
She sounded like she came from Ventura. Later on, when I saw her again at another conference, or I think it was at Irish Christmas in America.
Yeah.
I would have sworn she was from Ireland because she's got that little thing in her voice now. Is that just happening naturally, or are you giving her lessons?
I can't take any credit for that. I can assure you. It does happen, doesn't it? I mean, some people, because Irish people have emigrated for so long, it's always an interesting thing when you meet an Irish person who's emigrated, because there are plenty of people who just never ever change their accent. They could be gone from Ireland like for 50 years, and they just seem to speak the same as if they were living in Ireland. And then you get people that, whatever it is, they're more adaptable in listening and fitting in with the local way of speaking. So I think you either fall one way or the other, in that you either kind of assimilate, or you just really, really keep your own identity very strong,
So on Sunday, September 13th at 10 a.m., we're going to do Irish breakfast in Ireland with you and Samantha. What do you hope people walk away with during that performance? I mean, for musicians, I always find that there's always something they want to impart, but Irish music is always so upbeat. Is there some feeling that you want people to walk away with during a performance?
Yeah, it's I have two answers for that. What I want people, and then what I want to enjoy about it from our perspective as well. But I think what we'd like people to enjoy from musical performance is, I think music is a great escape, and I see that in a positive way. Not that we're escaping from somewhere we don't like, but it just brings us to a different place, and that's what I think is one of the beautiful things about music. And I enjoy playing music. I also enjoy listening to music. But when I listen to music, it brings me to a different place. So, there are people that have been to Ireland. There are people that have not been to Ireland. But even if you've never been to Ireland, I think listening to the music gives you some sense about Ireland, about the Irish people, and about how we live life, or how life has been lived in Ireland over time, because the music and the culture reflects society, to a greater or lesser extent. And I suppose the other end of it then, what we're looking forward to, I think what we were looking forward to is just the setting of actually the way this is going to be with the Zoom concert, rather than just playing a Facebook Live concert. Is I'm looking forward to seeing people's faces and hearing what people have to say, because we, as musicians, we can exist for a certain amount of time, playing for ourselves and playing for the walls around us, or playing out in the open, or wherever you like to play. But ultimately we need people to play for, and even if people are not saying anything, it's just to see people's faces, and that will be a wonderful thing, and something that we are treasuring even more than ever now. It was something that has been readily available for us for most of our lives. But I think now we're even putting a higher value on that. And Samantha and myself played a live concert, our first live concert actually since March, in Sligo here at the local theatre. They've been kind of dipping their toes in by having lobby concerts, and this was the second one just a couple of nights ago, and that was really, really lovely, really wonderful to see people again and to play for people. So thank you so much for putting this together. It means a hell of a lot to us, and I hope that it's not just us that enjoys it. I hope the audience will have a lovely time as well.
I guarantee they will. It's anyone who's had the pleasure of seeing you guys perform in the past will know that this is going to be just fun, and it's a great way to start the day. And I keep thinking to myself, you know, we're calling this Irish breakfast in America, or breakfast in Ireland, and I hope people trust me that you actually are in Ireland. You're not in the room next door, because I mean, we need some way to prove that you're actually in Ireland, because I thought to myself, well, I wonder if people really will believe it, but you are, and I thank you for putting this.
We'll prove it. We'll prove it with the rain. We'll show you the rain.
There you go. Is it raining there now?
No, but it will be tonight. We're getting a storm, a very heavy rainstorm. So I'll record some of it for you for a backdrop.
And you know, I know that during this lockdown, this COVID craziness, everyone, it's really impacted a lot of people in a bad way. I have to imagine, though, for you, this is really good timing, because you just had a son, and this is a great time for you to actually spend with him as opposed to being on the road.
You're absolutely right. An absolute blessing. Yeah, it really is. And sometimes life, you know, you have choices and sometimes you don't. And this has been a time when, as you said, most of us have been restrained in terms of our movement, but there's always other advantages to that. And it's been lovely. Our son Finan will be celebrating his first birthday in just about 3 days from now. So we're excited about that.
That's crazy. Time flies when it's crazy. Well, Oisin, thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. And we will look forward to seeing you guys live on Zoom next month.
Fantastic. Always lovely to chat to you, Chris. And thank you so much again.